Welcome. Today we will delve into the depths of naval history to understand why the creation and protection of the giant German battleship Tirpitz became a symbol of Nazi Germany's ambitions and fears. But behind this power lay not only technological achievements, but also mysteries of strategic balance, betrayal, and impossible tasks. Within a year of the beginning of the 20th century, Germany had built over 50,000 tons of warships, and Tirpitz, the largest and most powerful among them, became not just a combat vessel, it became an embodiment of national pride and a threat to Britain. Why, despite international restrictions, did Germany continue to expand its naval strength? What secrets were hidden behind Hitler's personal ambitions and his command? And how could the fate of Tirpitz have changed the course of the war in the Atlantic and the destiny of all Europe? In this investigation, we will gather all these fragmented facts and reveal who and why was truly orchestrating this deadly game. Are you ready to see what is hidden in archives and in the depths of the sea? Then let's begin. In the early 1930s, when Europe still firmly clung to post-war treaties and international agreements, Germany, under Adolf Hitler's leadership, was resolutely rushing toward a new era. Tension was in the air, soon to escalate into open conflict. But at that time, one thing was clear. Germany intended to regain its status as a naval power, lost after World War I. At this moment, in the depths of the shipyards in Kiel and Wilhelmshaven, a new era was beginning. An era when power and symbolism would become weapons no less important than actual armament. It was here, in the quiet yet tense atmosphere of preparation, that a project was born which would later become a symbol of German naval ambition, the ship named Tirpitz. Its birth was not just a technical achievement, nor merely another large warship. It was a challenge to the entire world, a declaration of Germany's determination to restore its place on the naval map. It appeared on April 1, 1939, a date that might initially have seemed like a joke, but for those who understood its significance, it marked the beginning of a new era. Tirpitz was the largest and most powerful battleship ever built in Europe. Its size and armament surpassed all previous examples, and the concept underlying its design, an evolution of the Bismarck-class idea, made it truly unique. It was named after Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, a man whose name embodied naval strength, strategic genius, and German maritime traditions. Every detail of this ship was a testament to the deliberate work of engineers and designers striving to surpass existing limits of capability. And in its steel hulls reflected not only technological glory, but also the symbolism of national pride, the desire to prove to the world that Germany was once again becoming a maritime power. But the construction of Tirpitz did not happen in a vacuum. While the ship was growing in the shipyard, the political landscape worldwide changed dramatically. Germany withdrew from international treaties such as the Washington Naval Treaty, an agreement that limited the tonnage and armament of the world's largest fleets. This unabashed rejection of previous restrictions opened new opportunities for Germany's naval program. Now, unbound by limitations, Germany could freely expand its naval forces, building giants capable of challenging any maritime power. The Plan Z project, announced around the same time, became the culmination of this strategic reorganization. It envisioned creating a powerful naval fleet that would include not only new battleships, but also aircraft carriers, cruisers, and hundreds of submarines. These ships were not just machinery, they embodied Hitler's ambitions to dominate the waters of Europe, control vital trade routes, and intimidate enemies. They were seen as more than military vessels. They symbolized national strength as tools of political influence and strategic deterrence. Meanwhile, an arms race was unfolding across the European continent. French Richelieu-class ships and Italian Littorio-class battleships became symbols of a new era of naval rivalry. Germany, in turn, aimed to match them not only in numbers but also in quality. The fleet-in-being strategy was not just about having ships afloat, it was about creating a threat that would keep opponents in constant tension. Tirpitz and her blood brother, Bismarck, were not merely warships. They embodied German naval ambitions and served as instruments of deterrence, capable of becoming tools of political pressure at any moment. In the 20th century, on the eve of World War II, naval power gained increasing importance. As part of preparations for a large-scale conflict, Germany began actively building and modernizing its fleet. Large-scale operations were planned, with Tirpitz set to play a key role. She was to become not only a warship, but also a symbol of German military might, power capable of shifting the naval balance of forces. But the question arises, what motivated Germany to take such risks? Why, despite international restrictions, internal difficulties, and economic hardships, did the country continue to develop and build these colossal ships? What strategy lay behind this reckless pursuit? Could this ship have been stopped, or was it doomed to become a symbol of defiance, power, and ultimately, the forefront of German naval policy? Why did Tirpitz become the centerpiece of this entire strategy? What is her true significance, her role in preparing the country for war, and how could her existence influence the future of Europe as a whole? And so, when the struggle for power, territory, and survival reached its peak, another crucial question arose. How will the decisive battle for Tirpitz, its fate, its defeat or victory, affect the balance of power in the Atlantic? What role will be assigned to this giant? And at what cost will Europe and the entire world pay for its existence? Ultimately, it is this story, this battle for the mightiest German battleship, that must reveal how personal ambitions, strategic decisions, and fateful events intertwine to determine the very destiny of Europe and the world. In the dark depths of the northern seas, where icy winds cut through to the bone and waves crash against the iron sides of ships, begins a story of struggle that could become an epic of unparalleled perseverance and ingenuity. At the center of this dramatic narrative is the colossal battleship Tirpitz, a South German monster that has evoked fear and awe among the Allies since its appearance. After entering the war, when the world was still shrouded in uncertainty, Britain quickly realized that this ship was not just another military vessel. It became a symbol of threat, a danger capable of shifting the balance of power. Therefore, in the early years of the conflict, British strategists, engineers, and intelligence officers began constructing an intricate network of attacks to stop this ship. The strategic fight against Tirpitz turned into a puzzle, a series of tactical and technical trials, each demanding ever more innovative solutions, greater ingenuity, and boldness. Numerous attempts to strike Tirpitz from the air, initially clumsy and often ineffective, demonstrated how difficult it was to destroy the giant. Over more than 30 major operations, when bombs fell from the sky like raindrops, sometimes hitting their targets, sometimes only scratching the armor, the ship remained undefeated. Its armor seemed invulnerable, and its crew confident in their invincibility. However, these failures only strengthened the Allies' resolve. They understood, if Tirpitz remained alive, it could once again pose a threat capable of destroying vital convoys, blocking sea routes, and altering the course of the war. Therefore, in July 1942, during an attempt to attack convoy PQ-17, Tirpitz's presence once again played a fateful role. The German giant, like a hunter, forced Allied ships to scatter, resulting in the loss of 24 vessels. This catastrophic incident reinforced the British determination to destroy Tirpitz at any cost. But what next? How to defeat a ship that withstood the most powerful blows? The initial air raids carried out by the Royal Air Force proved to be ineffective. Tirpitz's armor seemed too thick, and its systems too well protected. Then a new strategy emerged: covert attacks using specialized underwater torpedo carriers. These small, nearly invisible submarines, like shadows, began patrolling the seas, crossing icy waters, hiding from radars and detection systems. All of their tactics were based on silence, surprise, and precision. In October 1942, British commandos carried out a daring operation known as Tittle. Using mini-submarines, tiny underwater craft, they attempted to approach Tirpitz and attach explosives. The location was stormy, with strong currents disrupting accuracy, and the submarine equipment malfunctioned intermittently. As a result, despite heroism and risk, the attack ended in failure. But this failure only strengthened the belief of British strategists. New approaches were necessary. It was only in early 1943, after numerous attempts, that the Allies achieved success. As part of Operation Source, a secret and risky mission, X-class miniature submarines were sent toward Tirpitz. Their mission was to inflict damage, disable the ship, and ensure it no longer posed a threat. And they succeeded. As a result, Tirpitz sustained serious damage, forcing it to remain out of service for several months. This was a real breakthrough, demonstrating that tactics, engineering skill, and intelligence were beginning to pay off. Over the following year, despite efforts by the Air Force, operations codenamed Tungsten, Mascot, and Goodwood, the ship continued to sustain damage but remained beyond reach for complete destruction. Its armor, defensive systems, and command centers were all prepared so that Tirpitz could hold out until the very end. The use of the latest weapons, tallboy bombs, specially designed to destroy heavy targets, and intelligence gathered through the Enigma code system became key elements in the fight against this giant. Analysis shows that intelligence played a decisive role. Through eavesdropping, message interception, and decoding, the Allies knew the exact location of Tirpitz, its weak points, and moments of greatest vulnerability. This information allowed them to prepare final strikes that, despite all obstacles, could end the existence of the monster on the sea. So, the question arises, what tactical and technological innovations enabled the British to gradually weaken Tirpitz's combat capability? And what role did intelligence play in this? The answer lies in constant search for new solutions, ongoing modernization of methods and armament. At every stage, from the initial clumsy bombings to precise underwater attacks, the Allies used everything at their disposal to get closer to their goal. Their successes were based not only on technological innovations, but also on analytical work by intelligence, which transformed information into a tactical advantage. And what if all of this is just part of a larger struggle? Will the British, despite all obstacles, be able to finally destroy Tirpitz? What new technologies and tactics await them on the path to ultimate victory? These questions remain unanswered, looming like a shadow over the maritime expanses, where each new day is a chance, each attack a risk, and the story of the struggle for control over the sea continues to be written in the rhythm of endless battles. In the shadow of the powerful coasts of the North Sea, in the heart of Nazi Germany, a new era of naval greatness was beginning to take shape. And this era, although initiated by the government leadership, was primarily a reflection of personal ambitions. The ambitions of a man who dreamed not just of restoring his country's strength, but of elevating it to a level comparable to the naval powers of the past. Adolf Hitler's gaze, cast into the distant sea, was full of daring and determination. He saw in the new fleet not only weapons, not merely a means of defense or attack, but a symbol of national pride, an instrument for Germany's revival as a maritime power capable of demonstrating its strength to the world. It was this aspiration that underpinned his policies, which, despite internal contradictions and resource limitations, continued to push forward the construction of new ships, most notably the legendary Tirpitz. After the Nazi leader seized power in January 1933, his initial steps in the naval sphere were clear and decisive. He did not hide his plans for modernization and expansion of the fleet. The German Admiralty, long dreaming of a return to maritime power, received a powerful boost. A large-scale rearmament program was launched, aimed at bringing the Kriegsmarine to a new level. Central to this program was the creation of new, more modern ships capable of competing with the British fleet, which remained Germany's primary naval adversary. Among them was the colossal battleship Tirpitz, named after one of the most famous heroes of the German fleet, a man whose name became a symbol of naval ambition, a symbol that was meant to embody Germany's naval revival. Year after year, in a time when Europe was inflamed with passions and the shadow of war was already darkening over the continent, the construction of Tirpitz gained momentum. In 1939, during the height of tense preparations for war, Germany decided to demonstrate its strength to the world. At a parade in Wilhelmshaven, in the port where the future giant was kept, Hitler personally attended the launch of Tirpitz into the water. It was not just a ceremonial moment, but an act of demonstrating power, challenge, and confidence. The majestic ship, like a monument to German might, slowly glided across the water, surrounded by an orchestra, flags, and ship horns. Hitler looked at it as if it were a living embodiment of his dreams, a force that would forever change the balance of power at sea. His presence underscored the significance of this event, transforming it into a symbol of national pride and military progress. At that moment, it seemed the entire world could hear his quiet but resolute voice, a voice that proclaimed, "Germany is returning to the naval stage." But behind this splendor lay strategic plans that demanded much more than just beautiful shipbuilding. In the 90 days announced in 1939, Germany devised a plan that would become the cornerstone of its future naval policy, Plan Z. This comprehensive strategic document envisioned the creation of a fleet consisting of 10 large battleships. These ships, like Titans, were meant to ensure dominance in the North and Atlantic regions, control maritime routes, and strike fear into the enemy. They were to serve as both shield and sword of German naval power, symbolizing the superiority that would strengthen Germany's position on the world stage. There was no room for chance or weakness in this plan. Everything was meticulously thought out. Each ship, each tactic, each move. At the heart of the entire concept was Tirpitz. This colossal battleship, like a hammer, was intended to serve not only as a combat vessel, but also as a political lever of pressure, a means of intimidation and demonstration of strength to both Germans and the world. Hitler, like the entire leadership, fully understood the significance of Tirpitz. He regarded this ship as a tool of political influence, an instrument to intimidate Britain and the USA, and as a vital symbol of Germany's naval revival. For him, as a leader, Tirpitz was not just a warship. It embodied the national idea, a living dream of restoring German naval greatness. He saw in it not only the protection of his coasts, but also a strategic trump card that could change the course of the war. In his eyes, this vessel was the key to making the German fleet a formidable deterrent, turning naval combat into not only a technical, but also a psychological war. In his fleet strategy, Tirpitz played a special role as a deterrent, making enemies think twice before engaging this sea monster. However, behind this grandeur lay a harsh reality. Building and maintaining Tirpitz was costly and required constant protection. German leadership knew that while this ship was a powerful weapon, it was also a vulnerable symbol that demanded ongoing efforts for its safeguarding and support. It was the focal point, a magnet for enemy attacks, and each loss could deal a blow to the entire naval strategy of the country. Internal disagreements, resource limitations, and the need to balance military and economic priorities all created tension within the command. Yet, despite everything, Hitler was firmly committed to preserving Tirpitz as a key element of his naval strategy, even with the country's limited capabilities. He understood that this ship embodied not only strength, but also the symbol of national will, a reminder of a revived Germany capable of standing against the entire world. So we are faced with a central question. To what extent could Hitler's personal ambitions and the strategic plans developed within Operation Z realistically lead to naval dominance? Because despite the grandeur and scale of the envisioned plans, the reality of war is always a struggle, not only of technology and numbers, but also of psychological pressure, resources, and unforeseen circumstances. How plausible was it that Germany, armed with Tirpitz and prepared according to Operation Z, could have shifted the balance of power at sea? Or were all these ambitions and plans merely illusions, created to deceive both oneself and the enemy? This question hangs in the air like a shadow over all strategic decisions. Ultimately, how would the development of Tirpitz and the implementation of Operation Z affect the outcome of the struggle for control of the seas? Could these ships become the final bastion that determines the fate of the war, or would they remain just symbols that failed to stop the impending catastrophe? In this story, as in all war, everything depends not only on the power of the ship, but also on its ability to influence the course of events, to inspire fear and hope. And therein lies the entire complexity, depth, and tragedy of Nazi Germany's naval strategy. Majestic and formidable, Tirpitz was not just a giant ship. It became a symbol of the strength and technological superiority of the German Navy at a time when naval battles determined the destinies of empires. Its long, nearly 251 meters, powerful hull was like a steel giant rising above the waves of the North Sea. The size of this ship was staggering, over 40 meters in width, with a displacement exceeding 52,000 tons in wartime, all indicating that we were not simply dealing with a ship, but a mobile fortress floating in the ocean's abyss. During those years, when most vessels were governed by laws of speed and maneuverability, Tirpitz stood out for its massiveness and power. It was the largest ship in Europe, an embodiment of engineering ingenuity, where every detail was calculated and executed with impeccable precision. To understand why this steel monster was considered virtually invincible, one must look at its heart, its propulsion system. Over 160,000 horsepower, a figure that sounds like a loud refutation of any possibility of opposition. This engine, combining the latest technologies of the time, allowed Tirpitz to reach speeds that seemed fantastic, up to 30 knots. In an era when the sea was a battlefield and speed could save or doom, Tirpitz became unpredictable and dangerous. Every minute spent in motion gave it a decisive advantage, enabling it to quickly evade enemy fire or, conversely, to appear unexpectedly where it was least expected. But the main thing was its armament. 8 giant 15-inch guns mounted in 3-story turrets were more than just artillery. They represented a deadly arsenal, capable of striking targets at a distance of 35 kilometers. Each of the 4 turrets, Anton, Bruno, Caesar, and Dora, was designed to ensure maximum accuracy and firepower. These guns were a nightmare for any enemy ship, as their destructive power could penetrate even the thickest armor. Yet, armament was only part of the equation. The Tirpitz's defense system included secondary guns, 5.9-inch and 4.1-inch weapons intended for engaging smaller targets and defending against fast attacks. But the most critical component was its anti-aircraft armament. Initially 28, later increased to 58 powerful anti-aircraft guns, which at the time were considered cutting-edge for defending against air raids. In an era when air attacks were becoming increasingly dangerous, this system could shoot down enemy aircraft before they even approached the ship. Nevertheless, despite such a formidable defense system, vulnerabilities remained, especially to modern bombs like the Tallboy, which even the engineering community had not fully anticipated. Equally important was Tirpitz's reconnaissance capability, provided by the Arado AR-196 seaplane, a small but vital reconnaissance aircraft capable of conducting scouting missions. It not only expanded the ship's informational horizon, but also enabled torpedo attacks, making the vessel a threat both on the surface and underwater. All possible measures were taken to defend against approaching torpedo attacks and air raids. Everything was designed with protection in mind. Armor protection was another key aspect. Thin steel plates, just 320 millimeters thick, seemed impenetrable. They made Tirpitz virtually inaccessible to most artillery shells that could hit her. Every armor plate, every layer of steel, was engineered to withstand the most powerful artillery of the era. But even this protection was not absolute. As time passed and technology advanced, new types of weapons emerged, bombs capable of penetrating such thicknesses with ease. So why, despite all this technological superiority, did Tirpitz become a target for constant attacks? Why, despite its seeming invincibility, did it prove vulnerable? These questions form the central conflict of this story. Defensive strength, engineering solutions, tactical strategies, all made the ship nearly unstoppable in traditional naval battles. But at the same time, its design, size, and the weaknesses embedded in the very concept of a massive fortress created conditions for vulnerability. As time went on, new weapons and tactics emerged, making Tirpitz susceptible to coordinated and well-planned operations. And here, in this clash between technological superiority and tactical weaknesses, the main question arises. Why, despite all evidence of its invincibility, did Tirpitz still become a target? What vulnerabilities in its design and defenses did British and Soviet operations exploit to disable it? How exactly did these forces, armed not so much with brute strength but with cunning and knowledge, manage to destroy a legend that seemed almost indestructible? This is the question that underpins the entire story. The answer holds the key to understanding how technology and tactics, no matter how modern and powerful, can be vulnerable if they are met not only with force, but also with intelligence. And this is not only about the ship. It is a story of how human ingenuity, strategic decisions, and structural weaknesses intertwined in the endless struggle for dominance at sea. It is in this confrontation that the very meaning we seek is born. What makes one machine nearly invincible, another vulnerable, and what lessons can be drawn from this for the future? In the depths of the North Sea, hidden beneath an endless gray shroud of fog, stands one of the most formidable symbols of naval power, the Tirpitz. This colossal battleship, majestically and menacingly rising above the water's surface, became more than just a target of combat engagements. It transformed into a prize for ruthless, carefully planned operations, each one a step in the fight for control of the sea, strategic advantage, and ultimate victory or defeat. Each of these operations was not merely a tactical move or a technical act. It was a testament to human ingenuity, resolve, and ruthless determination to end the monster that had become a symbol of German naval might. Recalling October 1942, it is impossible not to imagine the scene when Allied forces, eager to destroy Tirpitz, launched their first serious attempt, Operation Tail. Mini-submarines, specially designed for this mission, slowly and cautiously approached the target in the treacherous waters of the North Sea. The quiet whisper of waves, the hum of engines, the tense commands of the crews, all of this was part of a grand game of cat and mouse. But something went wrong. Ocean currents, unpredictable weather, and technical weaknesses of the mini-submarines played a cruel joke. For several hours, reconnaissance and preparation proved futile. The ship, which seemed nearly untouchable, escaped death, leaving behind only lessons and new challenges. This defeat demonstrated that old methods no longer worked, and that new, more sophisticated, and cunning approaches were necessary to reach the goal. It was at this moment that a new plan, a new tactic, Operation Source, was conceived. In September 1943, 6 X-class mini-submarines, like shadows, slipped into the sea and approached Tirpitz. Each was armed with powerful charges, capable of inflicting significant damage. And so, on one quiet, silent day when the sea appeared calm, an event occurred that changed the course of the struggle. Due to miscalculations, technical failures, and perhaps crew errors, one of the mini-submarines suffered an accident right alongside the giant. An explosion, a splash of water, the sound of a break, and the Tirpitz sustained its first serious damage. For several days, the ship had to halt operations, undergoing heavy repairs, while the Allies learned an important lesson. Even with the most advanced technology, destroying this monster was no easy task. But the war continued, and in April 1944, the moment came when all efforts were concentrated on a new, larger-scale strike, Operation Tungsten. The Allied air forces employed a new tactic, bombing from the air, using heavy bombs designed to destroy the hardest targets. Bomber aircraft took to the skies like clouds, concealing death and destruction. Although Tirpitz withstood the blows, Its hull sustained noticeable damage, and its systems suffered serious impairments. It was undoubtedly wounded, but not broken. It kept afloat, as if demonstrating its resilience and strength. In the following months, the Allies did not relent, launching new attacks, Operation Mascot and Operation Goodwood. These assaults were more extensive, becoming part of a strategy to weaken the enemy, transforming Tirpitz from an invincible titan into a vulnerable target. In this context, in September 1944, the Allies employed a revolutionary new tactic, the use of Barnes-Wallis bombs, known as tall boys. These super-heavy bombs, like bulldozers, penetrated any armor layer, turning the ship into a heap of shimmering metal fragments. The explosions were powerful, the sounds deafening. As a result, Tirpitz was forced to withdraw for repairs, its crew realizing that the enemy was closing in on its final objective. And it was then, in November 1944, that the Allies prepared their final decisive blow. Operation Catechism. 39 heavy bombs soared into the sky, each carrying a deadly charge, tall boys, capable of causing destruction on a seismic level. These bombs, like chunks of hell, found their target. Explosions roared, the earth trembled, metal melted and shattered in all directions. Tirpitz, the giant, the monster, the symbol of German naval power, was finally destroyed, consumed by fire and metal. The aftermath of this explosion was catastrophic. About 100 sailors lost their lives aboard, their bodies scattered across the waves, while over 100 others fought for their lives, trying to escape the blazing inferno. Only a few managed to survive, their lifeboats like sparks of hope vanishing into the fog. This moment marked the end of an era, the end of the struggle for control of the sea, a symbol of relentless progress in tactics and wartime technology. Looking into the years that followed, it is hard not to ask, what ensured the success of this final attack? What tactical advantages, technological achievements, and intelligence capabilities allowed the Allies to triumph over the invincible? What was the secret of this operation that brought an end to the months-long battle? Here, at the very heart of this story, lies the main conflict, the confrontation between human ingenuity and power, between technology and tactics, which ultimately merged in a single, decisive act of destruction. And in this, there is not only strategy, not only technology. There is something greater. The question remains, can new technologies, new reconnaissance methods, and new tactics finally eliminate all remaining German ships? Or is there a limit to the capabilities of human thought and engineering? Can even the most advanced achievements ultimately defeat a force that already seemed nearly unstoppable? This question remains forever open, for war is not only about battles and destruction. It is a constant push forward, a search for new solutions, new challenges, new mysteries that demand answers. And in this struggle, as in all naval battles throughout history, the key to victory is not only weapons, but also mind, strategy, and faith in triumph. Deep in the heart of the northern seas, where icy waters merge with fog and shadow, rises one of the most famous symbols of Nazi Germany's naval power, the battleship Tirpitz. This giant, like a steel monument towering above the waves, was not just a ship. It embodied the ambitions, pride, and strategic vision of Nazi Germany. But its fate was sealed, and after years of battles, attacks, and attempts to keep it afloat, Tirpitz became a symbol not only of military might, but also of defeat, which shook the foundations of German naval prestige and changed the course of history. The loss of Tirpitz was not just a tactical event, it marked the end of an era. German battleships, these giants capable of turning the tide of naval battles, carried hopes of controlling sea routes, deterring the British fleet, and strengthening strategic balance. But when Tirpitz, hidden in the fjords of Norway, was finally destroyed, it meant not only a physical loss, it was a symbolic blow to the entire German naval system. In the eyes of the Allies, especially the British and Americans, it became evidence that the era of battleships was coming to its logical end. Power had become obsolete, and the future belonged to new types of weapons, submarines and aircraft. Tirpitz, like many others of its kind, fell victim to time and technology. At the same time, the destruction of Tirpitz did not only free strategic resources, it had a profound psychological impact. Within Germany, in the hearts of Nazi leaders and ordinary soldiers, this catastrophe evoked a sense of vulnerability, a loss of confidence in their capabilities. Because this ship was not only a combat vessel, but also a living symbol of national pride. Hitler's pride, his personal victory, and a demonstration of strength. Its sinking undermined the myth of the invincibility of the German Navy, creating the impression that even the most mighty giants are not omnipotent. The era when Tirpitz proudly sliced through the waters of the North Sea remains in memory as a bygone epoch that has disappeared forever. Internally, it dealt a blow to morale and became a source of doubt and anxiety within the leadership and among the crew. It is also worth examining the fate of Tirpitz itself after its sinking. Restoration and subsequent studies show that, despite numerous damages, the ship was never able to play a significant role in further combat operations. After a series of raids and damages in 1943 and 1944, its strategic value diminished to zero. Ultimately, in the post-war years, when the war ended and peace became a new challenge for Germany, the remnants of the giant were raised from the seabed and dismantled. This was not merely a technical act, it was a symbolic end of an era. 8 years after the war's conclusion, as new states and new ideals rose from the ruins of the old world, the remains of Tirpitz disappeared as if dissolved into history. It was scrapped for metal, as if finally burying the memory of former greatness and pride. This loss affected not only Germany, but also the Allies. Victory in the naval struggle for control over the North Atlantic, for open sea routes, became one of the key factors determining the outcome of the war. The destruction of Tirpitz meant not only a physical loss, it was a victorious banner that cemented Allied dominance at sea. This victory strengthened confidence in strategic superiority, opened new horizons for naval logistics and commerce, and made it clear that the era of battleships was coming to an end. The time of giants like Tirpitz had passed. New forms of naval dominance, submarines and aircraft capable of striking the enemy while remaining unseen and elusive, came to the fore. It is at this point, at this transitional threshold, that the main meaning lies. The sinking of Tirpitz was not just a military failure or accident. It was a harbinger of change, a sign that the old, powerful but outdated weapon was giving way to a new world, one dominated by speed, stealth, and technological superiority. This moment is not only a story about a ship in a war, but also a lesson for modern naval warfare. How quickly strategic games change, and how vital adaptation and technological edge are. Ultimately, from the sinking of Tirpitz, one can draw the most important lessons. That even the most formidable and impressive eventually succumb to the laws of time and progress. And so, when we ask how exactly the sinking of Tirpitz changed naval strategy and the psychology of both sides, the answer lies at the core of this event. For Germany, it was a blow to its pride, a signal that even the mightiest giants are not invincible, that their power is subject to the laws of time. For the Allies, it was a confirmation of the correctness of their chosen strategy, a victory in naval combat that paved the way to victory in the war. But most importantly, it is a lesson that remains relevant today. In a world where technology develops at an incredible pace and new threats emerge at every turn, the story of Tirpitz reminds us, power without flexibility is only an illusion. Only those who can adapt will be able to maintain their positions. So, what lessons of modern naval tactics can be drawn from this tragedy? What conclusions can be made about the role of symbols, morality, and strategy? Ultimately, the sinking of the giant left behind not only destruction and memories, but also an indelible mark in history, reminding us that even the most imposing figures eventually give way to new rules of the game. And this is the main point. In constant movement, in the necessity not only of strength, but also of wisdom to understand when and how to use it. Because, as Tirpitz's story shows, in naval combat, as in life, victory is not only a matter of power, but also of intelligence. Deep in the cold waters of the sea, where waves whisper ancient secrets and the fate of empires is decided on the edge of tangible reality, stands one of the most powerful symbols of Nazi Germany's naval might, the heavy cruiser Tirpitz. This naval giant, like a steel monolith, captivated the attention and imagination of millions, but its significance went far beyond mere technical power. Tirpitz became a living embodiment of the ambitions, strategy, and unyielding will of the Nazi regime. It was not only a ship but also a symbol of the German naval idea, embodying the goals and desires that, despite restrictions, wars, and conflicts, continued to burn in the hearts of fascist ideology's followers. Throughout World War II, Tirpitz remained a beacon of German naval strength, even when its combat capabilities were limited and enemies sought ways to destroy it. The very existence of the ship, its presence in the Norwegian fjords, was not just about having a vessel. It was a demonstration of power, a challenge to the enemy, a strategic argument that could change the course of the campaign. Recall at least the numerous attempts to destroy this monument. There were many. Over the years, Allied forces employed various tactics: air raids, submarine attacks, reconnaissance, and blockade operations. Each of these attempts is a micro-model of modern combat, where different technologies, strategies, and intelligence methods are combined. And all of this was for one purpose: to destroy a symbol of adversity, to break the power that could threaten the Allies at any moment. Multiple failures, and finally, the success of the last attack, proved to be no mere coincidence. They demonstrated how important coordinated efforts among various security forces are, as well as the critical importance of selecting the right weapons and technologies. In this story, a special role is played by the air forces, which in modern understanding are not just aviation but a tool for precision strikes. Recalling that final operation, when specially trained bombers using extremely powerful bombs, such as Tallboy, delivered a deadly blow to the most heavily protected target, the heavy cruiser, means understanding how warfare tactics have changed. This success carries a lesson that even the most powerful and seemingly impregnable objects are not immune to modern technologies and coordinated enemy efforts. Reports of Tirpitz's sinking were not only news about material losses, they became a symbol of change, evidence that the era of line ships, mighty and formidable, is gradually giving way to new forms of weaponry and tactics. In this context, the story of Tirpitz is not just about a specific ship, it is a lesson for the future. It shows that in modern conflict, strength alone is not enough. Strategy, intelligence, and the ability to adapt quickly to new realities are equally crucial. The impact of this campaign is reflected in contemporary concepts of precision strikes, accurate, high-tech operations that minimize casualties and destruction. It also underscores the understanding that asymmetric warfare, where the weaker side can oppose the stronger, is a reality of today, and the lessons of Tirpitz confirm this. The history of this ship is not only a story about war, it is a story about strategic thinking, technological superiority, and the importance of flexible responses to the challenges of the times. Tirpitz's sinking became the culmination of this idea. It demonstrated that even the most powerful and invincible can be destroyed with the right approach and the use of modern technologies. This case highlighted the importance of reconnaissance, precision, innovation, and coordinated actions. Ultimately, the sinking of Tirpitz became a symbol of the transition from the era of line ships to the age of modern weapons, where victory is determined not only by strength, but also by tactics, intelligence, and timeliness. Against this backdrop, a vital question arises. What does this story say about the future of naval and air combat? What lessons can be learned from the fate of this giant to prepare for the new challenges already on the horizon? After all, every moment of Tirpitz's story is not only a tale of the past, but also a foundation for the future. Modern threats require new strategies, new technologies, and new approaches. In this context, the story of this cruiser is not just a retrospective but a challenge, a call for reflection. What new forms of warfare, what new types of weapons, what new tactics await us tomorrow? And how can the lessons learned from the fight against Tirpitz help ensure security and protection in a changing world? This is not just a story about a ship. This is a lesson that there is no absolute protection in war. Even the most powerful structures and the most impregnable citadels can be destroyed if properly prepared, and if the full arsenal of modern technologies is used. It serves as a reminder of the need for strategic flexibility, intelligence, technological superiority, and the ability to adapt quickly to changing conditions. Finally, it is a warning that in the future, as in the past, success will depend on the ability to understand and learn from history's lessons in order to prevent new threats or minimize their consequences. The story of Tirpitz is not just a part of military history. It is a mirror reflecting our own challenges and fears. It reminds us that in any war, regardless of its name or the changing forms it takes, the core values remain unchanged. Reason, preparation, strategy, and technological progress. Only those who learn from the past will be able to secure their future. This is the main lesson embodied by this powerful symbol, Tirpitz,